Hey all, we are live, coming from a remote location today, but we are fortunate to have Bill Meltzer joining us because we're going to preview the Flyers today and another team as well. That team being the Ottawa Senators, correct?
Correct. Yep.
Sorry, I do have my notes. I just want to look at them real quick.
Yes,
we get to Philadelphia, which is always a lot of fun. So we're not going to do as much news up front. We are going to do some. I'm going to do some quick hit news right off the top. And Russ, go ahead. You can go. Russ, do something real quick.
Yeah, I was reading an article Larry Brooks did over the weekend about the Olympics and how it affects TV coverage, and he sort of had this negative slant that NBC's given sort of the middle finger to the NHL because they're not going to show any NHL games during that Olympic window. And my answer would be, why would I expect them to show NHL games when it would compete directly with what they're trying to do with the Olympics? Like, I totally get it. I don't think this is a middle finger at all. I think this is just what I would expect them to do.
Where I think he is getting from is that there has been something going on. We've talked about this a lot over the past year or so, and I mentioned a couple times that I thought one of the reasons I thought they were still keeping the Olympics alive was because of NBC. I thought NBC kept it alive a lot longer than anybody else did. From their side of things, because obviously NBC has only so much staff, dedicated to hockey, and and they don't want to compete with themselves. You're right about that.
Well,
so
it's
not comes down to what he's saying is where he left it out a little bit here, in my opinion, is he didn't talk about the fact that was part of the negotiations all along in his article.
Right.
And so this is a little bit more of a. I mean, it's not a screw you by NBC. It's a pure business decision. So it's but the business decision is based on the fact that they don't want to compete with themselves. They pay an awful lot of money for the Olympics, and they really want the NHL to go to the Olympics, in the future if they're going to be working with them again. So
you can make the argument that they don't have. I mean, NBCSN will be the main hub, other than NBC is the broadcast network, and NBC. I mean, for all the programming. So I mean, they can use CNBC and MSNBC for other things, but they try not to do that because they're not in as many homes as NBC and NBCSN. But the argument that they don't have enough crews to cover it is a fallacy, because you've seen them on their second broadcast sometimes use the broadcast crew of TSN or Sportsnet.
Or you've seen Darren Pang do water polo too. Like, you've seen other things happen.
Yeah. But what I'm saying is they could cover it if they wanted to use local broadcasts, but they're not doing it because they want they want to devote all the time to the Olympics, but B, I think they may be a little miffed that the NHL is not going. And honestly, I don't care. This is a play to punish the IOC for the treatment that they've made to the NHL over the last 2 years. And I'm all in favor of the NHL sticking it to the IOC.
See, I don't think it's about punishing the IOC at all.
I don't think it is.
I think it is, because they're not getting anything for their players.
Yeah, but they're not punishing the IOC by that. They're okay not going to the Olympics,
right?
And the owners have always been okay not going to the Olympics, because it protects their players in a lot of ways. The NHL wants to go to the Olympics because they realize the bigger scope of it all. But the NHL obviously represents the owners, so they're not going to talk about it.
But they would go to
the IOC comes into play. Is the IOC is really limited to what they can offer, because this is just one sport in the whole scheme of things. And as big as the sport is, Bill, go ahead.
I believe it's their biggest.
Bill had something. Go ahead, Bill. Yeah.
Oh no! There were the smoke detectors went off here in the skate zone, but then they went off.
No, what the NHL is looking for is the same type of favorable treatment that the IOC has given to the NBA,
right.
and they're not doing that because maybe in their minds they don't consider hockey a major sport. Well, honestly,
that has more to do with the summer versus winter Olympics.
Yeah, I think that's exactly what it has to do.
They have way more money invested. The Summer Olympics are a way bigger ticket.
Yes, it's always been bigger.
Well, enjoy South Korea with your main sport, the sport that you center everything around being the Russians and everybody else.
Yeah, but the one thing I Brooks did a good job on was this. He actually did ask the question, which no one seems to want to ask, which is, do NHL players really, right now with the state of the world going on, should we be sending these millionaire players and their families to South Korea?
Yeah,
I mean that's a question that no one seems to want to talk about.
We did talk about it like months and months ago.
We talked about it, but I haven't seen it out there. And he asked Lundqvist.
No, you're right.
Lundqvist said, well, Sochi was a good experience for everybody, and but that was a lot. I mean, Sochi is
a lot less tense. Yeah.
Way more controllable, as uncontrollable as it was.
Well, I mean,
Vancouver is to Sochi as Sochi is to South Korea. I mean, this is a totally different ball of wax.
Well, I mean, if you remember Sarajevo in '84,
right.
The ethnic cleansing in Bosnia and in the Balkans happened 3-4 years after that Olympics. I mean, it wasn't going on at that time, but it happened soon after. You know, I mean, that having an Olympics.
I do feel terrible for the people of South Korea who are putting these games on. I mean, that isn't. I mean, the amount of money and the amount of effort and the energy that goes on, and volunteers and all kinds of people trying to put this thing on. These Olympics are going to be very, very difficult.
But here's the other thing that no one is going to want to talk about. And as that tournament moves on, if there are a couple players that we all deem are worthy of watching, those ratings are going to beat some NHL games in ratings, and then that's going to be another issue that will spark some.
And Russ, what if the U.S. boycotts these Olympics at the last minute?
Like, I don't think that will happen, but it's possible.
What if something comes along and they just feel like it's not boycotting is the wrong word, but they just feel like the situation has grown way too unsafe, way too unstable?
Well, honestly, if Kim Jong-un decides to shoot a missile over the Korean Peninsula, and he flaunts himself in the face of the UN and the U.S. for the warnings that they've laid on them the last little while, you could see them say, but I don't think they would be alone, Ak. I think there would be other countries that would say that they're not safe. They don't feel safe.
I think these Olympics are in.
I don't think that's going to happen, though, Ak. I mean, we did show up in Berlin with Hitler there, right? I mean, if we showed up then, we're going to probably show up now.
Well, two things.
And again, look, I mean, geez, what happened there?
Two things that'll stop the North Koreans from doing anything. One is China, and the other is Russia. They're two of their main allies, and especially the Russians, especially Putin. He wants that gold medal in hockey. So you don't think he's going to tell Kim Jong-un to calm down for a couple weeks? He probably would.
I hope to think that they would have enough sense to let the Olympics go on and like have some sort of, not ceasefire, but some kind of saying we're going to. But I don't think, and it's only going to be Russia that's going to make that happen, because they don't care about embarrassing South Korea or America or anything like that. So anyway, let's move on, and we'll talk a little politics after the introduction, just a little, very, very little, I promise. So it's not because we do not political here, but we'll do the introductions. It'll be me and then Bill and Russ. I guess is that how we should do it?
Me, Bill, Russ.
Age order usually.
Yeah.
Russ, the oldest person here. All right. Hello, Hockey World. It's Monday, September 25th, 2017.
I'm Michael Agello.
I'm Bill Meltzer.
I'm Russ Cohen from Sportsology.
And I'm Eklund. You're watching HockeyBuzzcast on HockeyBuzz.com. This is the podcast that comes every Monday through Friday at this time to fill you in on the comings and goings in the hockey world. And we are getting very, very scaringly close to the NHL season starting. We are starting to see NHL lineups in preseason games. We're starting to see final cuts being made. We're starting to see whether or not players are going to get sent back. But we do have to start the show briefly, very, very briefly, because we're gonna preview both the Ottawa Senators and the Philadelphia Flyers today, because we're also starting to run out of time in our previews. So here's the deal. So obviously, what happened over the weekend with President Trump calling out the NFL players, then going, taking their perfectly, fair, making their statements that they wanted to make, whether or not standing, kneeling, joining arms, not joining arms, whatever, is a sports story to a large extent. However, and then of course the Pittsburgh Penguins story came up and all that, and Pittsburgh Penguins saying they are going to go, and the Golden State team not going to go. So all this stuff you've been hearing about, probably ad infinitum in other places. We really at Hockey Buzz don't want to get involved in that too much. And I mean, obviously, when it becomes a hockey story, we have to write about it. But we think that there are, believe it or not, there are places you can read about what's going on in the world right now. There are a couple websites out there talking about it, and it's very serious. And our writers are all very passionate people, and they all want to write about it too, because it's something that you want to share with your community. And I've told them not to, at least to the point of placing opinions on this as far as politically goes. So that's sort of, that being said, we had Austin Matthews come out today and say, basically that he would stand for the national anthem because, and this is the great thing about this is, not that Austin Matthews says that or not, but the great thing about this we have to remember is the fact that he can say that.
Right.
The fact he can sit there and he can state, this is why I want to stand. And someone else can sit and state, this is why I'm not going to stand. that is what makes our country our country. That is what makes us great, and will always be the case. And that to me is, it does it tell you something about Austin Matthews? Sure. Does it make me feel less of him if he went the other direction? No. It does. This is just the way he would go. Would I stay under Steele? I don't even know. If I was put in that position, what I would do.
Well,
it's not. And when I said yesterday, and I'm going to get off this really quickly. I said yesterday that I don't want to get political because I feel like everybody out there comes to us to escape this kind of stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And I feel a very specific role that we play on the internet, as a place to go when all that stuff is bumming you out. I'm gonna go read about hockey for a second, because hockey is just hockey. Again, it's not life threatening. It's gonna be an okay thing to talk about. So we're trying to keep our place like that for now. And I know that it's hard, and I know that we all have opinions, and we could do an incredibly heated podcast about this, and we all have very, very strong opinions one way or the other. But I also know we have people that follow Hockey Buzz that don't share our opinions. Some that do. I don't want this to be about that. I want to hear your opinion on Kevin Fiala. I don't care about your opinion on what's happening in politics as far as this particular place goes. Okay, so this place is supposed to be a place you can get away from that. So that's what we're trying to do. And I guess that's all I'm trying to say. And I really appreciate our writers. A lot of them, we had to take a couple things down over the weekend. And a lot of them who are, they want to say something, which I understand. But I appreciate them understanding why we don't want them to use this for that, and just we're going to keep it there, I guess. So, anything to add, Bill, as one of our big editors here?
No, I would say that I think there are appropriate ways for writers to express themselves, even our writers. Certainly your own personal social media accounts.
Yes.
They're a forum. And I think I think that any kind of factual reporting, so and so said, and just I think that those are all legitimate ways of covering this as a site. But I agree that our mission statement as a site is to focus on the sport and the game itself. Yeah. Like a lot of times we won't get into players' personal lives unless it's very specific, unless it very specifically affects them on the ice or whatnot. So we have things that that we will do, things that we won't do. And I understand that not everybody's going to agree with our stance on it, but it is our stance.
I have one thing I'll add, and I had a friend text this to me, and it's true. This sport is mostly Canadian and European, so those people think completely different than the way we do. So that's why I would never hold it against them if they go and not if they didn't. Because, look, they weren't brought up the same way we were.
Yeah. And even if they were, it's the right to be able to speak your mind should be a universal right. It should be a part of it. It isn't though. And it is a right that we have in this country, but it's not a universal right. It is a right that they have in Canada, for the most part, and in other places in the place we're talking about where these people come from, Sweden, Finland, their rights are pretty good. And there's other places that where some of our players come from who don't have really great universal world records as far as there's a lot of stuff that's happened in Russia, obviously. So
what people don't realize is that there is freedom of expression, but that does not mean that you are free of the consequences of that expression. And when you're someone who works in the National Football League and the league wants you, the Pittsburgh Steelers did not come out for the national anthem yesterday. That deviated from the league rule.
Right.
All I'm so, and I don't, when you found Political Buzz Act, then it'll give us the venue to view these.
I'll be a lot richer, Mike. Also,
but it's Hockey Buzz, and we should stick to just talking about the game, and now statements that have made today from players that has to be covered. But I just think where this is leading. And this, may not be in the NHL because I think it's too ingrained, but where this is leading along most lines of professional sports is I think you're going to see the national anthem before the players even come out of the locker rooms. I think that's going to be, they don't want to give voice to players' political agendas, and the crowd will sing the national anthem, and then the players will come out of the locker room, which is what happened before 2009. So I think that's what's going to happen in the end.
And the interesting debate about there's an interesting debate about the national anthems at all, like and I think that's. But I like a tradition. For me, a tradition. The players standing on the blue lines, the national anthem's going off. I like that. Personally, but why do I like that? Not really because of its American statement, just because it's part of the tradition of the whole thing.
I think hockey will be the one exception. I think Major League Baseball and the NBA and the NFL, I think they are going to avoid this because it's getting to be a political football that they don't want to handle. In the NHL, I don't think it's a problem. I think you'll have the national anthem sung. On Hockey Night in Canada, they want to see the both national anthems. So you're going to see it. I don't think it'll ever change in the NHL.
Right. And last thing is this. What I think, and this is just a little personal statement, but it's not a positive or a negative either side. So this is my last thing that I'll say on it. Then you guys can each say one more thing if you want to, and then we'll move on. Okay, I married a woman who's Jewish, right? And because I married a woman who's Jewish, we had to discuss a lot of things that I wouldn't have had to discuss if I had married a woman who was Christian. I had to go through a lot of different aspects of things. How are we going to handle Christmas? How are we going to raise our children? What's going to, what's this, what's that? Because of that, all that discussion, we became a stronger couple, and I really believe that in a lot of things that happen. Like I know a lot of people who just, married other Christians or married other Jews or whatever, and they didn't have to go through this. And then they come up against some things that well, I think we should celebrate this way, or I think we should celebrate that way, even though they're the same religion. Because what I think. And what this president has done is really made us have to communicate a lot more about how we really feel about things. There's a positive aspect to that, that people are more engaged in and that people realize that politics and who you vote for is important is a positive aspect of this. So that's all I'll say. So don't sit there and judge people. And it's not fair in my opinion to judge people based on it is fair, however, to have those discussions with your family, with your loved ones, and to go through it of why you feel this way. That I think is important.
Okay, let's talk some hockey, please.
Yep.
Ready? All right. Thank you very much. All right. Okay. All right. It was a quicker transition than I was ready for, Mike. All right. The Tampa Bay Lightning are going to retire Vinny Lecavallier's number. Shouldn't be a surprise. I don't think there's any more important player to that organization in his career. And we got really lucky to get to meet Vinny a little bit more when he was here in Philly, got to know him a lot better. I was so impressed with Vinny Lecavalier in Philadelphia.
As a person, there hardly meet a better guy than Vinny. Yeah. Vinny's just a tremendous guy, and he was, as you say, he was the face of the franchise in Tampa Bay, and it's a deserved honor for him for sure.
Does Tampa get special dispensation on the buyout for retiring his number? Or?
Right. Yeah.
I think it's amazing though because I think it's just. But I think it's amazing because pre-Stanley Cup win, for a while he was looked at as a huge failure based on where he was drafted, based on his output, based on everything else, and then post-Cup it all changed, and that's great for him. I think he deserves it.
Russ, can't you say that that's the same thing that happened with Yzerman in Detroit before they started winning cups?
Not to that degree. Not to that degree. I'll tell you. I'll use a better analogy. You want a better analogy?
Okay.
Pat Burrell in Philly, before he got one double that drove in a big run, fans booed him. They didn't look at him in a positive way or anything, but he helped them win a World Series. So now every time he comes back, they cheer him. It's a similar situation, but Vinny had a much better career than Pat Burrell.
That'll happen with Josh McCown with the Jets, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Isn't that funny? I think that what I was impressed with Vinny in Philly was the fact that it wasn't a great situation for him here. Obviously, he came to it. He came to a team because of a coach who was fired 4 games into the season. Basically, it was the one of the main reasons he came here was convinced by Lecavalier that he would have a role. Didn't have a role. And yet still, despite the fact that here's a guy with, who you would think was spoiled or whatever because of all the money he's made, because he's made more money than almost anyone in the NHL. He has made some serious money. Never once did I get the impression he was spoiled. Never once did I get an entitled feeling from him at all.
I'm not sure he ever complained.
He honestly didn't. The closest thing I heard him to complaining was seeing him one time talking to Marty Brodeur in French, upstairs, and I felt as if I heard something in French because I understand French a little bit. That was as if to say he was a little sick of the situation. That was about the closest I would get from him. Bill, you never really heard him complain either, right?
Never once heard him complain. Even when he was a healthy scratch for weeks at a time, he would go out, take his extra skating, say all the right things. You could see that he was frustrated. I mean, I could see both sides of that issue because they tried him in a variety of roles.
Yeah.
And he really didn't fit. And they tried him on all 4 lines at different times too. And they really couldn't find the right fit for him. So I could see the coaching staff side, but certainly as a player who'd had the career that Vinny had, and certainly, as you said, he had his pick of destinations, chose the Flyers. So, you could see him rocking the boat to try to get out of town, and he never did that, to his credit.
Yeah, he never did. He never ever did. I really was impressed by him, and I'm thrilled. Yeah, obviously, but he also put so much money into charities down in Tampa and hospitals, in a similar way to PK Subban in Montreal. So it's just he's really classy. He was almost traded, very, very close to being traded to Montreal at one point, a deal that was nixed by the NHL, according to people I've talked to many times. And I think that story has to come out eventually, and it will. But
well, I know that he was almost traded to Toronto too.
Yeah,
I've interviewed Bill Waters, and he said that I think Rick Dudley was the general manager in Tampa Bay at the time, and they had a deal worked out, but the ownership nixed the deal.
Yeah.
And this was around, I think, 2002, 2003, before the Stanley Cup.
Yeah, and that was the time, like you said, Russ, where his value in Tampa was, is he living up to it? Is he living up to his first round billing? And even in the Stanley, I mean, he wasn't the full reason that team won the Stanley Cup. I mean, that team had huge performances.
Dave Vanderchuk was a huge reason. Brad Richards was a massive reason.
Dan Boyle.
Ruslan Fedotenko. Don't forget Ruslan Fedotenko's.
He scored some big goals. He did.
Huge goals in that. I mean, got them past the Flyers in the semifinals pretty much. So, yeah, another fun thing before we get into this comes from Eric Engels, our former Eric Engels. Not former Eric Engels, he's still Eric Engels. But,
current Eric Engels, formerly of Hockey.
Hockey Buzz Eric Engels. Hockey Buzz writer, formerly known as Eric. Okay. Says that this is on his Twitter. Is that Paul Byron has a pretty good response for the people who believe his 22% shooting success from last season is unsustainable, because a lot of people do believe that Paul Byron's 22% shooting percentage was. Here's his quote, which I thought was pretty funny. I can take 50 more shots from the blue line and get it down if that'll make anyone feel better. Guys in the league get 100 shots from inside the tiny little house that a high danger shot comes from. That's where all my opportunities are. That's where all my chances are. I think if you manipulate the data a little bit and remove a lot of the shots that aren't really high danger shots, you see a lot of players have higher shooting percentages from inside that area. That's always been me. I've always had a lot of scoring chances, and shooting on Carey Price certainly helps, because when you get into a game, you don't face many goalies who are as good as him. So he's saying that if we calculated shooting percentage from within, between the faceoff dots, basically down low, they'd all be around 22%.
Right, that's an argument for how Stratomatic calculates shots. Because remember, the outside shot and the inside shot was different.
Very different. Very different.
I think the big thing with Byron is, if you ever talk to him, and I'm a fan of his, is that he's always sort of got this driving force, chip on his shoulder, that he has to be that good or that much of a specialist to keep his job. So I think it was nice that he sort of didn't take the credit for the 22%, because look, he probably won't have that this year, but he'll probably have the same amount of goals. That's the funny thing. He will. I think people who think he's going to drop off are wrong.
No, he's been pretty solid.
The Prince of PDO.
A quick rumor too, and then we'll get on to the Flyers.
And Ottawa.
And Ottawa. Of course, Ottawa. I'm not discounting Ottawa. We'll start with Ottawa. All right. So anyway, okay. So here we go. Quick rumor. The Blues have been decimated with injuries in the preseason already. They've been taking a lot of hits, a lot of players going down. Not quite sure. I mean, decimated maybe is a big word, but some of the injuries are dangerous in terms of the fact they may be longer than they wanted them to be.
Well, Fabry is one of them.
And Fabry's a huge player for them, and a big reason why I think that team went down last year in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Fabry was, so up steps, perhaps Jarome Iginla, who is completely, almost, I keep expecting the Jarome Iginla retirement thing any day now. So that's why I put this in, because I first saw it. So let's put in steps. Perhaps Jarome Iginla, Bill, do you think Jarome Iginla would bring anything to this team? Do you think this is a good idea for them?
Well, you always have, Iginla's a guy who you always have the intangibles, his locker room presence. Still is a good net front guy on the power play. Mm-hmm. I think the tank is pretty close to empty finally with Iginla. I don't know you know, I think for a short burst, if he's a guy who you add, you know, later in the season, might have an impact. But I wonder over an 82 game season if he would, you know, how much impact he would have for a sustained basis.
Yeah, I kind of do too.
Well, he had 14 goals in 80 games last year, and I know that with Colorado, he was playing in a top 6 role. He wasn't playing that as much with LA. If he was open to playing a third line role, I think he could help. But his pedigree is that he's always been a top 6 guy. If he's not accepting of that, then maybe I would not go in that direction. There are a couple other players out there that are on training camp invites that might not get signed by other teams, that maybe St. Louis could, cherry pick one of them, and that would be a better choice than Iginla.
Yeah, maybe. I mean, the only thing I would say about Iginla that I really like is I agree with Bill on the intangibles part of this thing, and I think that this is a team that can use some intangible help. Like, I really think that, you know, they've been through a lot of playoff series now where they've had success, but they haven't been able to take it over the top. Is Iginla the guy who can take it over the top? No, but perhaps he can definitely help you get further. And here's a guy who's very driven to win a Stanley Cup. Like, Iginla has had opportunities to play other places. There are people who he's turned down offers to play.
Right, and they did lose Steve. They did lose Steve Ott last year. He retired, and he's sort of that intangible guy. They don't play the same position, but yeah, I mean, he could fit that or fill that intangible gap, possibly.
I think so. All right, let's move on to the Ottawa Senators then. Previewing the Ottawa Senators, and then we will get on to the Philadelphia Flyers after that. All right, the Ottawa Senators, surprisingly, by some people except for me, who picked them to finish second in the division. Oh, this is the last time I'll be able to brag about that, so I'm going to do it now. They finished second in the division, and we're actually ahead of the Montreal Canadiens for a while during the last month of the season. They had trouble beating Montreal, though, when Montreal actually won the division by beating Ottawa 3 out of 4 times, I think, down the stretch. They were, then, of course, during the regular season, goals per game, 22nd in the league. Not very good. Goals against, 11th. They had a really good year defensively. Power play percentage, 23rd. Penalty killing, 22nd. None of that sounds like a playoff team, but it is definitely – they were a playoff team, and not just a playoff team. They were 1 goal away from actually going to the Stanley Cup final. And they did it with a really hodgepodge group of players. And got a great year out of Bobby Ryan. Obviously, they have added
great playoffs.
Oh yeah.
Not a great year, a great playoff.
Great playoff out of Bobby Ryan, right? Great playoff out of Bobby Ryan. So that's very fair to say. They have not added that many pieces to this. I mean, with the exception of Johnny Oduya, who is, I think more of like a 5-6 player right now, 5-6 defender for you right now, and Nate Thompson, who is really more of a character type guy, but can bring some extra like little zeal to your team. This team is basically Craig Anderson's team, and Craig Anderson went through all kinds of craziness last year, of course, and was incredible for how he handled it and how he went through it. But the American duo of Anderson and Condon is going to be their goaltending duo, and once again proving that Ontario teams love American players more than anyone else, because they seem to. It seems to be. Yeah. But this team is not Bobby Ryan, another American, obviously. The biggest player on this team is unquestionably, there's no question, where this team goes. Only goes as far as their stud defenseman can take them, right?
Erik Karlsson. Yeah.
I'm sorry, Erik Karlsson. Yeah, I apologize. Thanks, Mike, for understanding. I was like, oh, what the heck? Why am I thinking? Sorry, been hit on the head a little bit the last couple of days. So Erik Karlsson, who is injured, not skating with the team yet. Or skating with the team now, I think, right? But not quite.
He just got on the ice. Yeah, in the last couple days, but he's well far away from being ready for game action.
Derek Brassard is also hurt. Clark MacArthur's didn't pass his physical. Clark MacArthur turned out to be a big player for them in the playoffs last year.
Yeah.
Finally. So a lot of people are picking this team in a very tough division to fall out of it a bit. This is a team that's easy to pick a demise of, but it's people have been picking Ottawa's demise for several seasons, which is one of my reasons I didn't pick them to demise last year. I thought they might as well at some point have a good year, a really good year, and they did. Let's start with you, Bill, in Ottawa. What are your thoughts on this team?
Well, I mean, you said it is Anderson's team in terms of he's a glue guy for them, but I mean it's Erik Karlsson's team.
Oh yeah,
and getting Carlson back in the lineup healthy, playing at 100% or close to 100%. I mean, that's the biggest thing. You really don't want to bury yourself early in the season. Have a better read on Ottawa to see what kind of start they get off to. And then there are the guys like the Tourises who, I mean, they're not the highest echelon guys, but they have depth in the team. The guys like the Tourises and the Hoffmans have produced for the team, and they're never guys who get mentioned the same light as some of the really high end guys. But I mean, Ottawa just has found ways to overachieve. I'm not going to write them off.
Yeah.
Well, I wrote them off.
They kind of have 2 second lines and 2 third lines in a lot of ways. When I look at their lineup, they're not really they don't really have a first line, but they also have pretty good depth through. Go ahead, Mike.
Well, I wrote them off last year. I picked them for last in the NHL because I just didn't see it, and I was shocked more than anybody that they got as far as they did. Maybe I was 1 year too early because, again, now the thing is they're depending a lot on a lot of the youngsters, and their organization is developing. Colin White is out for probably 6 to 8 weeks with a broken wrist, but he's going to be a player for that team. And when he is healthy, I think he's going to step in probably as a number 2 or number 3 center. Thomas Chabot was one of the best defensemen at the World Junior last year. He's going to step in for Mathot, who they lost in expansion. What people don't realize and don't recognize is that this team sort of rode the emotion of the Craig Anderson situation last year. I mean, it was heartrending, the whole situation with his wife, and he had to step away for numerous weeks while she was going through treatment. And Mike Condon, who stepped up and played wonderfully for them. Yeah. There's no guarantee that A, Condon can do that again, or B, Anderson can play lights out like he did last year. And that's the core of that team other than Carlson. And Carlson is not going to rush back because him at 80% is probably better than most of the defensemen in the league, but they want him at 100%. So he could miss the first month of the season. And if that team is under 500 without him, they're starting behind the 8 ball because you can't fall too far behind. There's talent there, but all the contributing factors, to me, I think they're in the lower half of the Atlantic Division.
Oh, trying not to get lumped in with Mike, which is going to be hard to do. Look, I've seen Derek Brassard play when he's banged up, and he'll play, but he's like Claude Giroux. When he plays when he's banged up, he's not nearly the same player and won't get nearly the same amount of goals. Carlson will definitely come back in October, but we've also seen him come back too soon. And, yes, he's still better than a lot of guys, but not the same guy that team needs him to be. Colin White's loss is a big loss because he was going to start this season and probably gain a lot of valuable experience. Now he's going to start the season rehabbing. That's going to change the dynamic too. I mean, Logan Brown may be able to step in, and if he does, that's a hell of a 6'6", 220 guy to put in there. We'll see. I mean, that could solve a center spot for him. But at the end of the day, I think these injuries are just too much to start out the season. I think they are going to be in the hole because everybody really has gotten better around them. And so I think they're going to just narrowly miss the playoffs. I do.
Yeah, so playoff team, Bill, what do you think?
They're one of those teams that are on the bubble, and that's why I agree with Mike that if they get off to a slow start for the first month of the season, they're below 500, it's going to be an uphill climb for them the rest of the way, and that's a really, really hard way to play where you're trying to gain points as the season goes along. I said I'm not writing them off yet, but if I had to just put it down on paper, they would be just outside the bubble.
Yeah, I didn't pick them for 30th, but I didn't do that. But I just think that they're going to be in the bottom half of the division, unless that could mean wild card, or that could mean just outside. They're that 7 through 12. They're that 7 through 12. There you go. Let there be light, Bill.
Yes, it's the new lighting system here at the skate zone.
They'll be in that group of the 7th through 12 teams that possible for them to make the playoffs. But the first month is going to be the big challenge for them. If they can be 500 or a little above, they have a good chance. If they're significantly under 500, then they're toast.
Mike, I would just say don't try and cross the border into Ottawa. That's all I'm saying.
I try to find interesting numbers on this team, and the one number that really struck me on this team is their key players are all really young still. I mean, they're not young, but they are in their primes. You know, like you're talking about.
Yeah, if they were all healthy, we probably would have a different outlook, right?
Yeah. Hoffman, Torres, Stone, Peugeot, Smith, Dzingel. These guys are really all. And even Carlson, who is, you know, remarkably, you know, Carlson is not old. It seems like Carlson's been in the NHL forever, right? It really just feels like he's been around for a very long time, and yet, you know, he's still only 27 years old. I mean, so and you know, they have older players. Of course, Craig Anderson's 37 practically. You know, so it's like, you know, you look at this thing, it's, you know, and Burroughs is 37. So when you look at their average age of their team, it's not that young, because you've got guys like Burroughs, and you've got Thompson's 33, and MacArthur's older, and Oduya's 36, and you know this, but the whole team, where they're really getting their scoring from are a lot of guys who are basically 25, 26, 27 years old, right in there. Mm-hmm. That's usually a good sign. I mean, that's usually a good sign for a team, you know, moving forward. So I don't think they're a playoff team this year, though. In my opinion, I'm not putting them in the playoffs yet. But I kind of agree. So Russ, you don't think they're a playoff team either?
I don't.
And Mike, you don't either, right? Obviously. And Bill thinks they're on the bubble. I mean, I would go with the bubble as well, because it's.
But you can't be on the bubble. On this show, they either make it or they don't. You can't house in the bubble.
Yes, I do not think they're a playoff team, because I do think the Buffalo Sabres are going to give them issues. I think that there's certain teams that are moving up in this whole thing. I think the Islanders are going to give them issues. So there's teams I think that are going to be. We'll get there. We'll get there. All right, so let's move on to Philadelphia Flyers and all that entails. The Flyers last year, of course, you remember, and of course, if you're a Flyers fan, you can't forget, they finished 6th in the division. You know, with a really kind of a rough year, 39, 33, and 10, despite having a great winning streak early on in the season, and looking like they were, you know, I think they became the first team to win 10 in a row and not make the playoffs in NHL history.
Yeah,
they were.
That's a great stat to have. So they own that. You know, this you know, I think they'll look at the 35-game streak as a better streak record for them in the future. Their goals per game 20th in the NHL, goals against per game 18th, neither of which are going to get you in the playoffs. Power play percentage 14th, which is really bad for the Flyers, because the Flyers, the one thing they have had over the last couple of years is a good power play. Penalty killing 19th, which is very low for the Flyers in general. Of course, the big acquisition this summer was going out and getting Ben Bishop. Brian Elliott.
Yeah.
I'm thinking of the team. Brian Elliott. I apologize. Out of Calgary, and of course a little ping pong ball luck in grabbing Nolan Patrick with the 2nd pick overall, who got his first assist finally yesterday. I guess it was yesterday, right?
Yeah, it was last week, and
right.
Yeah, he put one since then. Yeah.
As I said, I got hit on the head yesterday hard, so I'm doing my best here. So right now, you know, the big story, Bill, is obviously Claude Giroux playing on the left wing, which does enable them to move Nolan Patrick up. And the questions about whether or not we were thinking if Nolan Patrick is going to stay or going to go, looks like he's going to stay right now, right, Bill?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at the numbers game on the roster, if they're carrying 14 forwards, they still have, you know, they'll have 2 cuts to make.
Yeah.
So Mike Vecchione, it's not looking good for Vecchione, and he's also waiver exempt this year.
Right.
So that's one cut right there. You know, the other cut will either be probably Taylor Lear, although he's had a really good preseason. If it's not Lear, it might be a veteran. You know, it might be a Matt Reed type. But in any of those equations, you know, Patrick is on the team and Oscar Lindblom's on the team too. Yeah, and then, you know, the question is, do they carry 2 or 3 rookie defensemen? Because, you know, Travis Sanheim started out with he was up and down in the rookie game. You know, he scored kind of a fluky goal, but he made some really nice plays in the offensive zone. But he also had quite a few defensive issues, and that carried over into the first exhibition game.
Okay.
But in the last 2 games, he might have been the Flyers' best defenseman outside of Provorov in those games. You know, and Sam Morin has been steady throughout, and Robert Haig has been steady throughout. But do you want to go into a season with 3 rookies, a second-year defenseman, which is Provorov, even though he doesn't play like one,
right,
and a third-year defenseman, Gostisbehere, is you know, is most of your defense. That's a lot of inexperience to go into the season with. So I'm still thinking that Sanheim, who is he's waiver exempt this year, I think he goes down to the Phantoms, and when there's an injury, he's the first call. But 2 years ago, Gostisbehere was in the same situation, came up and never went back again.
Right.
So I mean, it could be that kind of situation too. But to answer your question on the top, I don't see a scenario where Patrick is not on the team, and Giroux playing left wing is one of the things that potentially opens that up. They have Couturier in the middle, and I mean Giroux's he's actually embraced trying this wholeheartedly.
Okay.
I mean it hasn't been one of those I'll just do it if they say that's best for the team. He's actually been great about it. He's been enthusiastic about trying it. He creates a lot off the left walls anyway.
Yeah, he does.
He's never played left wing before. He was drafted as a right winger, played his first, I believe, year and a half in the NHL in the right wing, and then they moved him to center and he was playing center. He was playing center regularly with the 2010 playoffs and has been a center exclusively since then. Has never played left wing, 5-on-5. But like I said, he does work the left half wall on the power play. It'll be interesting to see how he adapts. It'll be interesting to see how the styles mesh with Sean Couturier, who's a different kind of a player. It'll be interesting to see all of that, and then some of the bubble guys are not in the lineup tonight.
Okay.
So Vecchione and Lear are both sitting tonight, but there's a back-to-back game, so they'll probably be playing tomorrow, I would think.
Right, and they're back home tomorrow too.
Yeah.
Now, I do like Giroux on the left wing. With obviously the part I like about Giroux is he is right-handed, so he does. That's one of the reasons he does work really well off that left side. And he's a great passer, which I think has gone away from his game a little bit the last couple of years. I mean, his playmaking ability is. I mean, and I don't think it's necessarily because of him, but more because of the way of the kind of players he's played with throughout that period of time.
I think it's the responsibilities of being a center too. Like when I brought up him playing the wing earlier this summer, it was because I saw him declining in the faceoff dot. And if if he doesn't have to take every faceoff, that's going to add to his offense.
No, it's true. That's true.
I don't know about declining in the faceoff dot. He was about 55% last year, but he's a guy who, I think last season, if you look at him, he first 15 games he got off to actually a pretty quick start, and then he kind of hit a wall, and he never really got it back. How much of it was having a short summer after hip and groin surgery? How much of it was, playing in World Cup and also getting hurt at World Cup, although not a serious injury, but he was still banged up there too, and maybe it was a little conditioning thing. I don't know, but he was a non-factor. The biggest thing with Giroux that I've noticed the last couple of years, and it's not the playmaking end, it's that he wasn't able to get separation from the defense. He's not the fastest guy, but he's one of the quickest guys, in the NHL, and the quickness just wasn't there. I don't think he was shying away from going inside the dots. He just wasn't getting there. He was checked before he would get there. He's been skating better in the preseason. Will that hold up all season? I don't know, but I think a move to wing, may help. And of course, Couturier is one of the top defensive centers in the NHL. That would take a little bit of heat off of Giroux from the defensive side. I thought in Dave Haxtell's first year as coach, I actually thought Giroux was very big in getting buy-in to what Haxtell was trying to implement.
Yeah.
Giroux sacrificed points, but was a better overall player that year than he was the previous year in Craig Berube's last season as coach.
Right.
But you're going to need more numbers from him too. I think that maybe playing left wing, although it's not going to be a full-time thing. I'm not even sure they're going to open the season that way. Right. But if that's an option they can go to at times, I think it could open things up.
It's a little strange because to me it feels like they have. Obviously, you have Nolan Patrick coming in, who's a center. You trade away Braden Shen, who's a center.
Although Shen pretty much played wing last year.
Yeah, he moved around center.
I think he wanted to play center, and I think there was a lot of pressure.
To play center. Although my feeling with Braden is that he's not good enough defensively to play center as a top role. I mean, to me, actually, I've liked him best on right wing, and best with playing with Couturier. They seem to have some chemistry together. He was very good in the power play too. But.
They really did, and and Couturier as a top line center, it is kind of fascinating because when you start thinking, they're moving Couturier from a third line center to a second line center. He's moved up consistently, and he does have more offense to his game, but he's absolutely, since he came into the league, been a defensive center. I always think of him kind of like the Jordan Stahl, for the Flyers, and that he's been so that he can bring you offense, but he's really defensive. That line is a very strange line for me because it was Giroux, Voracek, and Couturier. and it feels as if they're just waiting to put Nolan Patrick there or something, or they're looking to, or they're looking to move. They're going to move Giroux back, and have you seen any kind of chemistry between Patrick and Simmons? I mean, I know they're playing together. I thought one of my predictions this year was we'd have a Legion of Doom line 2 this year. I felt like Simmons and Patrick were made to play together. It really does feel that way.
Yeah, they'll be. I mean, they've been together the last few days of practice, and there'll be a line tonight with Jordan Wheel. And last year was Wheel and Filppula and Simmons, and they like the way that line looked together. But they want to get a look at Patrick up there. Yeah, just to backtrack for a second with Couturier's offense.
Yeah,
I think the thing with Couturier has been you get hints of it. I mean, 2 seasons ago, he had a stretch of 15 points in 15 games, right?
Yeah.
Last season, he had a stretch of 10 points in 10 games. Yeah. But then there were those 25, 28-game droughts where he's not even heard from offensively. I think maybe moving up, I mean, in theory, it might reduce some of those droughts in there. But I think, he's never been a good power play guy.
No.
They've tried him on the left half wall, which is where he's going to be in the second unit. They've tried him as net front. Early in his career, they tried him out at the point, which is where he actually played quite a bit in junior hockey. And he's never really found a spot in the power play where he's been very effective. Well, he's put up actually a pretty good number of even strength points, but if you're not producing in the power play, it's going to be hard to produce a lot of points in the league. I think that,
oh yeah.
Yeah, so I think that everything's going to be a really huge point guy.
Yeah.
But I think he's still capable of more than he's done.
I look at this team, and in 2 to 3 years, they are going to be so scary because of the young players like Konechny and Patrick up front. Couturier and Simmons will be in their prime. Maybe I think Giroux and Voracek will still be good, and that defense. You'll have all these young guys with a year or two of experience, but also Carter Hart will be their goaltender. Right now, this team is, when you have when you have two guys like Elliott and Neuwirth, you don't have a number one, and you're never going to win without a number one. I don't think any team can win by committee. And Brian Elliott at his best is really good, but he has usually a 1 to 2 month window where he is horrific. And he's had that throughout his career in St. Louis and in Calgary. Neuwirth I like, but Neuwirth I've seen for many a year in Washington, he couldn't get the number one job. And in Philadelphia, it was always, whenever everybody thought he was going to take over, then Mason stepped in and Mason was the guy. So I don't think that this team, there's some talent there right now, but I don't think there's enough talent and the goaltending to go along with it for them to be a serious playoff contender. So similarly, I think they're going to be in the bottom part of the Metro. I think they'll be ahead of New Jersey. But, they'll be around where Carolina is. And Carolina could even jump into the playoff race with the young players that they have. So, I mean, right now, I'm not very optimistic on the Flyers, but in a couple of years, they're going to be scary.
Yeah, I like the way things are shaping up. I like the addition of Jori Lehtera. I think he's actually going to have a nice bounce-back year with them. I think he just needed a change of scenery, and he brings in a nice element that I think complements the Hackstall system. I think Lindblom will add a lot. I know there's now all of a sudden there's questions because Dave Hackstall gave this really generic quote the other day, and Bill did a good job of putting it up that, hey, he's going to have to elevate his game like everybody else. Well, thanks, Dave. We kind of that's like a non-answer for the media there on how he's doing. So
well, he's been I'll say that he's been very good. Actually, Patrick as well. They've both been very good without the puck, and that'll be the number one thing. Even if they're not scoring to start with, as long as they're being responsible defensively, and both have been said very, very solid in that.
Yeah,
they'll make the team. They'll stay in the lineup.
Yeah,
Lindblom had I thought a good offensively, a good first exhibition game. I think he had 5 shots on goal, and one of them was a really good chance. Had a nice little touch pass that turned into an assist in his second game. The Boston game, I don't know whether it was playing back-to-back days or maybe pressing a little bit. He was really not very involved in that game. And he's sitting tonight. They moved him down out of the rotation. We'll see where he slots tomorrow. I think eventually, I think he'll start the year on the top 9. Mm-hmm. Lehtera probably in the 4th line somewhere.
Right.
That's not how they're lining up tonight, but I think that's settle in. I think I've seen a pretty fair amount of Lindblom playing in Sweden in the World Juniors. He reminds me of a lesser version of Michael Renberg. Both solid two-way players. He doesn't have Renberg's speed from when Renberg was young. I think Renberg had 38 goals his first year in the NHL. I think Lindblom's going to settle in over time as about a 22 to 24 goal guy in the NHL who plays solidly on both sides of the puck. Getting back to Mike's point with how much youth there is in the lineup, that's why the team is really hard to figure. If they're starting the year with 2 or 3 rookies on defense, 2 young guys up front, and trying to get a bounce back year from Giroux, I mean that's a lot of things that have to have happen. There's the goaltending piece as well, and that could be its whole own topic.
Yeah.
Part of the reason Neuwirth's never been able to stay healthy. That's been the number one thing with Neuwirth not being able to stake down a job, is that he's always going down with something.
Yeah.
But Neuwirth last year, of all NHL goalies who played at least 15 games, had the worst save percentage in the NHL. He's a better goalie than that.
Yeah, he's a better goalie.
But I mean his career save percentage is .911. The league average over the last several years is just a hair under .915. I thought Mason got a little bit of a raw deal just in terms of performance. He did not have above average defensive teams in front of him. I think he actually had very average to somewhat below average defensive teams in front of him. But his save percentage for his Flyers career was .918, and he was, and his home record was right up near the very top in the NHL. The Flyers over the last, I believe it's 4 years, possibly 5, they actually have the 7th best home record in the NHL. The problem has been the road record.
Right.
And even last year, they were a 55-point team at home. Yeah. The problem is they cannot win on the road. They got, but there are reasons why they're not a very good road team.
Well,
and because there are holes in the lineup, and they're easier to match up against, when playing on the road. Over time, I think that as some of these young guys mature, they'll become a lot harder to match up against. Are they there yet? That's hard to say. I mean, I think there are teams that you would have to slot over them, predicting where they're sitting at right now.
I have a couple more points. I think for them to be a playoff team and be really successful, Neuwirth would have to play like 50 games, and he's never done that. So I think that is going to probably be the high watermark, because I don't think you want Elliott to play 50 games. I think at this point of Elliott's career, I wouldn't want him in that many games, unless he was ridiculously hot. He really did not have a good year last year, and he's really going to have to prove it over time this year. I think defensively, they're good. They're not great. I think the fact that Brandon Manning's back is coming around slowly will give 2 rookies the chance to definitely start the season. I don't know if Morin's a lock to stay there all year. We'll see when Manning's healthy what happens with that. I think he's going to get that first look, though, and I think it's important for him. And I think Hag will be the one rookie that is safe with a spot. I think for at least to start the season, I think it's better to send Sanheim down and let him just play the top everything. Top power play, top pairing, all that. I think I would rather see him do that. And then you see what happens this year. And Scott Lawton, that's going to be another good X factor. He could really add something to them if this is going to be his year. All that said, I think they're better than last year, but I think they come in 5th. I do. And I think they missed the playoffs.
Couple thoughts real quick, Bill, couple real quick and couple questions from people out there. This is my thought on what you brought up with Couturier. Couturier is, his offense has been streaky, like you said, mostly because his defense is so much on his head. Like, he seems to me, he's so defensively responsible and defense first all the time. He's afraid to take chances at times. He's afraid to take a rush. He won't leave a guy back. He will pick up for his wingers to a fault if they're out of position or something like that. He's very good at that. I'm a little worried about that when he's playing with Voracek and Giroux. I'm thinking in my mind, his mindset is going to be, Giroux's good defensively, no question about it. Voracek's not really that great defensively. I could see him feeling the need to pick up for those guys defensively, and that causing if that line was to stay together. I don't think. We don't know how long the line's going to be together, but that's just my thought on that line.
Well, I think there'll be a very good puck possession line.
Yeah,
and his number one thing offensively on that line, and of course, so he might play a little bit higher in the zone when they're starting to get set up, and then work his way down low. His number one thing would be get to the net. because he would be the guy who would bang something in close. You know, and that would kind of be his offensive role in that line. I think he's lost confidence in his shot over the years. It seemed to me that, and having watched him from the first day of his career, that earlier, much earlier in his career, he had much more confidence in his shooting ability. His rookie year, I remember clearly, he had a 5-game goal streak, and most of that on the fourth line, and only one of them was kind of a fluky goal. I mean, I believe like 3 of them, or maybe 4 of them, were top shelf under the crossbar from the right circle.
Yeah,
he doesn't even take those shots anymore. So I think that somewhere along the way he just lost his confidence in shooting the puck, and that can happen to a player.
Yeah, and also he was, as a rookie, and even and he still is to a degree. He's very good at getting on breakaways. He's always been good at getting onto breakaways. Not a big scorer, but he has a tendency to be able to find that. And I remember quite a few. He's had some of the nicer breakaway goals for the Flyers over the last couple of years, which you don't see very often. He will get that with Giroux. I mean, if he plays well, Giroux will find him if he's cheating up that way at certain times, but that requires him to think offense first all the time, in my mind. And that's what I'm worried. That's what I'm thinking about. Like, if he can shift those gears or not. This question is a little bit silly, but I do think people are thinking about it. Jordan Wheel comes in, and he comes in as we just talked about Vinny Lecavalier. He's the guy they got for Vinny Lecavalier, which was really just getting rid of Vinny Lecavallier's contract. Jordan Wheel, but the Wheel, a lot of people thought they stole. I remember Brush, they stole Jordan Wheel in this trade.
I felt they did. I felt like Hextall knew what he had in him, and the Kings had sort of run their course with him, and he took a guy that he was very familiar with. I still feel that way. He's not a superstar or anything, but you can see he's a very useful player.
He's a very useful player. Is a bit of a spark plug type player. Can make really nice plays.
He does have a high skill level. He does.
Yeah, he does. He's also number 19. All right. And as we sit there with Nolan Patrick wearing number 64 over and over and over again, watching, Nolan Patrick was number 19 everywhere he was. I was just very curious if any of this has been brought up or anything. Have you heard anything about this behind the scenes? Is there, Jordan Wheel's probably not going to give him number 19 because he's also a young player too. But, at the same time, there might be some pressure. Nolan Patrick is he's one of the top players taking the draft. Usually those guys end up.
Maybe Nolan Patrick will be 91.
Maybe, or maybe he'll just go completely a different direction as some players do. But have you heard anything about this?
No, I mean they're not worried about their uniform numbers. Actually, Wheel's wearing number 40. But but we'll see where when he finds out he makes the team. I don't think Patrick will be number 64 when the season starts. That's a training camp number.
Yeah, however, Gostisbehere, don't say that, right? Because Shane Gostisbehere has managed to maintain that number. He was never that number ever until
but he did so well his rookie year. He decided to keep it.
And I'll play dumb for not knowing this on the Flyers roster, but Nolan Patrick's dad Steve wore 26 when he was with the Buffalo Sabres, so maybe that'll be his number if anybody isn't wearing it.
Maybe not 26 for a while. I can remember. Obviously, Brian Propt is the most famous 26 the Flyers have ever had. And finally, Matt Reed. We've talked about Matt Reed a little bit. He could be the guy. This point last year, remember he was also the guy who could be on the way out. And he survived and then had a really good start to the season and then faded away quickly. Is Matt Reed going to? What are your predictions on that? How do you think that plays out?
Yeah, I mean he's one in that group that's fighting for one of the final roster spots, and he could start the year if he doesn't make the team. I mean, to me he's kind of because I don't think Vecchioni's making the team. So I think the last cut is either going to be Taylor Lear or it's going to be Reed.
Right.
And I mean, that's the guy he's battling with. Reed is a guy who, he's still getting paid like the guy who was a 2-time 20-goal scorer.
Yeah.
And his role has changed. He's strictly a fourth-line guy now.
Yeah.
As a what about a $3.6 million cap hit guy, and he's unrestricted at the end of this year too. I mean, he's in some trouble. A year ago, I didn't think he was going to get cut, and he didn't. I mean, if you remember Jordan Wheel ended up on waivers in order to get him to the AHL, and any team could have had him.
Right.
Any team could have claimed him.
Well, one factor could be here. I mean, if the performances are equal, Lear's making a little over $800,000, and as Bill just said, 3.6 for Reed. You can bury it's $1,000,025 when you send a veteran, send somebody down to the minors. So you're actually gaining $200,000 in cap space. If they're both equal, then you're making more room for yourself by keeping Lear and sending Reed down. And I probably don't think with his salary he's going to get claimed, but you might want to do that. There might be something. And then if he does clear and Lear doesn't perform well, you can always bring him back.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. And finally, Sanheim, who I do agree with you. I was sitting next to Rustin during the rookie game up there in the press box, and we were both talking about Sanheim he looked really struggling early in the rookie game. And the funny moment to me was they put up on the board, these are the previous Flyers who played in the rookie game, and they listed Claude Giroux and Voracek, and they listed Travis Sanheim. And I'm like, well, and he's playing again today. But I felt like to him that game, there was almost like, I didn't talk to him afterwards or know this. It felt like, I'm here again. I'm doing this again. Like he has now done this for a couple of years, and I think, and I wondered as he was definitely not good in that game. He looked very, shaky with the puck. Has gotten better, as you said. But is there really anything to gain from him playing in the AHL right now? I mean,
what would be the gain would be to play on the top pairing.
Yeah.
To play on the top power play. Although I don't know if he's going to play on the top power play unit because TJ Brennan is still there.
Right.
So
right.
Even in camp here, and then they're going to go with a 4-forward setup on the second power play unit as well as the first.
Right.
And Sanheim has not been part of that mix at practice and to me, power play is about what he does best.
Right. Right.
That's not even something you worry about with him. He's very good, particularly on the right side.
Mm-hmm.
I'd like to see him as a power play guy as he moves up to the NHL. The last couple of games, I thought he was quite good in the split squad game in Allentown, and I thought he was very good in the Boston game. And I mean defensively as well as offensively. It was just he just had to dial down some. He was a little indecisive in a couple of those games. And listen, we haven't even talked about Philippe Myers, who's already been sent down.
Right.
No, I think Sanheim's first camp. He had a really good first camp as a Flyer, but he knew he wasn't making the team. And a little bit like Myers last year, when you're playing with house money, sometimes you're more relaxed out there.
Yeah.
And when the pressure gets ratcheted up, sometimes it's hard for a guy out there. And I think Sanheim was looking at it's a rookies game. It's his fourth rookies game.
Yeah.
I want to stand out. I want to dominate the play, and I think he wasn't picking his spots very well in that game.
Yeah.
I think now that he's a little bit more settled in, at least from at the preseason pace, he'll be fine. I think there would be something to gain for him in the AHL, just in terms of showing he can put everything together for a full season. Because last year early on, the offense wasn't coming for him, so he started struggling, started pressing a little bit. Then the second half, he was tremendous. And then late in the season, you could see the effects by the playoffs of having played so many games last year. Yeah. So I think that putting it together for a full year would be what would be out there for him if he does go down.
Very good. Well, thank you so much, Bill. I think that we've got a ton of Flyers information. We really appreciate it, as always. I think let's talk about a playoff team here. We got final thoughts here. Officially a playoff team or not a playoff team? Russ?
Not a playoff team.
Mike?
Nope. Not a playoff team.
Bill?
Not yet, unless a lot of pieces come together.
Yeah, I'm putting them in the playoffs, and I didn't last year. I actually think they are better. I actually really do think they are a playoff team. I think they
were the number one goalie when they make it to the playoffs. That's my question to you.
Well, a lot of what we talk about with Neuwirth, you could pretty much go I don't know how many years back and just replace all those same things with Bobrovsky. Honestly, he's a good goalie, great goalie when he plays. He's really solid, but he gets hurt, so he'll never be able to stay in there long enough. But when he plays, he's really good. So who's to say that Neuwirth doesn't stay healthy and to turn that around? Because there are similar things to me. I think he is going to be their guy. I also think Brian Elliott will be better than people think going back to the East. And I feel like the goaltending will not be their issue. I think their issue will be scoring still, which is still their issue. And the defense is young, but I like where they're heading. And I do think they are the team this year that everybody seems to be picking on in the prediction, like Ottawa last year. So sometimes those teams turn out to have less pressure and they kind of us against the world type thing. I get that.
Well, Mike didn't pick the Flyers for last. Otherwise, I would agree with that.
No, last is definitely New Jersey.
Yeah. Well, I think so, but I think that they're going to be.
Oh no, actually, excuse me. They're second last. Last is the New York Islanders.
I also think the Islanders are going to make the playoffs.
I don't think the Islanders are a playoff team, Mac, but we'll talk to.
We'll
We'll talk about that later.
Remember, without the buzz, it is just hockey. We will talk to you tomorrow. Take care, guys.